For years, Tobey Maguire was everywhere. He wasn't just a name on a poster. He was the face of a generation, the young actor who leaped from independent films into global superstardom almost overnight. Everyone knew him as the friendly, earnest, and endlessly relatable star who could make audiences feel every moment, every emotion. But then, almost as suddenly as he appeared, Tobey Maguire seemed to vanish. The cameras no longer followed him. The blockbuster offers became fewer and fewer, and fans were left asking the same question: what really happened to him? The answer is far more complex than a simple "he retired" or "he's focusing on personal life." Behind the scenes, there was a mix of burnout, disillusionment with Hollywood, and a deeply personal desire to step away from the constant scrutiny that comes with fame. Tobey had lived the highs and lows of the industry: success, adoration, intense media attention, and the crushing pressure that accompanies being a beloved figure in some of the biggest films of the 2000s. And over time, the bright lights of Hollywood lost their appeal, replaced by a longing for privacy, normalcy, and control over his own life. Yet his story isn't one of defeat. It's a story of choice, reflection, and quietly redefining success on his own terms. Tobey Maguire didn't disappear because he couldn't handle fame. He disappeared because he chose a different path, one that Hollywood cameras and gossip columns couldn't follow. And now, years later, we're finally piecing together the real reasons why one of the most iconic actors of his generation stepped back, leaving the world wondering what happened to the Spider-Man we all grew up watching. Tobey Maguire's rise to fame was both rapid and remarkable. Born in 1975 in Santa Monica, California, he started acting as a teenager, appearing in small television roles and commercials. By the late 1990s, he had made a name for himself with a series of independent films that showcased his subtle talent and emotional depth. Films like Pleasantville and The Cider House Rules revealed a young actor capable of carrying complex roles, balancing vulnerability and intensity in a way that drew audiences in. But it wasn't just his acting that captured attention. It was the quiet authenticity he brought to every performance. A sincerity that made viewers feel as if they truly knew him, not just the characters he played. Then came 2002, the year that would forever change Tobey's life. Spider-Man premiered, and he instantly became a household name. Overnight, he transformed from a respected young actor into the face of one of the biggest film franchises in history. While many actors might have been overwhelmed by such a meteoric rise, Tobey embraced the challenge with a quiet determination. He poured himself into the role, not just physically but emotionally, striving to make Peter Parker feel real, relatable, and human. Fans adored him, critics praised him, and Hollywood saw him as a reliable box office draw capable of carrying franchises for years to come. But the pressures of fame began to creep in almost immediately. Tobey was no stranger to the spotlight, but the intensity of being the world's favorite Spider-Man took a toll. Paparazzi followed him relentlessly. Media scrutiny became invasive, and the once private moments of his life, dinners with friends, trips to the store, even simple walks, were turned into public spectacle. For someone who had always valued authenticity and discretion, this loss of privacy was more than frustrating. It was exhausting. The world loved Tobey, but it often didn't leave him room to breathe, think, or even exist without judgment. As the Spider-Man films continued, the toll grew heavier. Tobey began to feel trapped between expectations and his own desires. Fans wanted the same Peter Parker over and over, but Tobey wanted to grow, to explore different roles, to challenge himself beyond the superhero persona that had defined him. Hollywood, however, had a different idea. Typecasting, constant public scrutiny, and the relentless demand for perfection made it clear that his fame had become a cage. What had once been a dream was beginning to feel like a burden. And Tobey faced a difficult choice: continue on the high-speed track of blockbuster fame, or step back and reclaim his life on his own terms. By the time the third Spider-Man film was released, Tobey had already started to pull away. He remained professional on set, but he no longer sought the spotlight. Interviews became shorter, appearances more controlled, and he began investing more energy in personal projects, hobbies, and relationships outside the industry. Fans noticed the change, speculated endlessly, and media outlets churned out theories. But the truth was simple. Tobey needed space. Space to breathe, space to reflect, and space to be Tobey Maguire, not just Peter Parker. This decision, though quietly made, marked the beginning of his withdrawal from the Hollywood spotlight. It was not abrupt, nor was it dramatic. There were no scandals or public meltdowns, just a conscious, deliberate choice to prioritize life over fame, authenticity over obligation, and peace over adoration. Tobey Maguire was still the same talented actor, but he was finally putting himself first, redefining success in ways the public could only guess at, setting the stage for the years in which he would quietly vanish from the cameras, leaving everyone to wonder why the Spider-Man of a generation had seemingly disappeared. After stepping back from the Spider-Man spotlight, Tobey Maguire began a period of self-reflection that would define the next decade of his life. Hollywood, for all its glamour and excitement, had revealed its darker side to him, the relentless competition, the media scrutiny, and the pressure to maintain an image that was often more fiction than reality. Tobey had spent years performing not only for audiences, but for a culture that demanded perfection and constant visibility. Slowly, he realized that the cost of fame was higher than he was willing to pay. It wasn't about money, accolades, or even roles anymore. It was about preserving his mental health, his relationships, and his sense of identity. During this time, Tobey focused on projects that allowed him control and personal satisfaction. He began investing in film production, lending his expertise behind the camera to support stories that mattered to him rather than chasing blockbuster success. He became involved in smaller independent films that aligned with his interests and values, giving him a creative outlet without the constant intrusion of mainstream attention. This period wasn't silent for everyone, but it was carefully curated. Tobey had learned that the world didn't need to see every move he made to validate his career. His work could speak for itself. Away from the public eye, Tobey also dedicated himself to personal life in ways he never could while constantly in the spotlight. He focused on family, friendships, and private passions that Hollywood had made difficult to maintain. Simple routines, a morning coffee, an afternoon walk, or spending time with loved ones, became acts of liberation. Tobey understood that his value wasn't determined by box office numbers or media coverage. It was found in the quiet moments that nourished him emotionally and creatively. These years of retreat allowed him to reconnect with what truly mattered, giving him a sense of peace that fame had never provided. The absence of Tobey Maguire from major films also reflected a deliberate rejection of typecasting. After playing one of the most iconic superheroes in history, any role carried the weight of expectation. Directors, studios, and fans often saw him only as Peter Parker, ignoring the full depth of his acting ability. Tobey refused to compromise his standards simply to remain in the public eye. He understood that to continue performing without passion would erode his craft, and he chose instead to wait for projects that resonated with him personally. This decision may have frustrated Hollywood insiders, but it was emblematic of a man determined to remain true to himself above all else. Even with this retreat, Tobey's legacy remained untouchable. Fans of Spider-Man continued to idolize him, and his performances in earlier films remained beloved. But the mystique surrounding his absence only grew, as media outlets speculated endlessly, creating narratives about his supposed disappearance. In reality, Tobey was not lost or inactive. He was living intentionally, prioritizing health, creativity, and balance over the relentless cycle of celebrity. His decision highlighted a broader truth about fame. It is as much a prison as it is a privilege, and those who understand its cost often make the difficult choice to step back. By the time years had passed, Tobey Maguire had fully reclaimed his life. He moved freely between projects, family time, and personal interests without the constant glare of cameras. To the public, it might have seemed as if he had vanished, but the truth was far more empowering. Tobey had found control, serenity, and creative freedom in a world that had often left little room for either. His absence wasn't a loss, it was a deliberate, carefully considered choice that reflected a maturity few actors ever achieve. One of the most surprising aspects of Tobey Maguire's absence from the public eye is how intentional it has always been. While some actors fade due to dwindling opportunities or scandals, Tobey's retreat was a conscious decision, a reflection of his desire to take ownership of his own narrative. He had experienced the highs of fame, the adulation of fans, and the thrill of blockbuster success, but he had also felt the suffocating weight of expectation. Each new project, each public appearance, became a measure of how well he could conform to the persona the world had built for him. Tobey wanted to live beyond those limitations. He wanted to exist on his own terms, and that required stepping away from the constant spotlight. During this time, he explored other facets of life that Hollywood rarely allows its stars to pursue. Tobey delved into business ventures, including his now famous poker pursuits, which provided him both challenge and exhilaration without the intrusion of public scrutiny. Poker became more than a hobby. It was a game of skill, patience, and strategy that demanded focus and rewarded intellect. Here, Tobey could compete on merit rather than celebrity, a rare and liberating experience for someone whose name alone had often opened doors. The poker table became a place where he could reconnect with a sense of normalcy and control, far from the pressures of Hollywood studios and fan expectations. Beyond business and hobbies, Tobey placed a renewed emphasis on personal relationships. He had learned through years of intense fame that true connections could not exist under constant public observation. Retreating from the cameras allowed him to nurture friendships, family bonds, and romantic relationships in a private, authentic way. For someone who had grown up in the unforgiving glare of fame, these moments were invaluable. They grounded him, reminded him of who he was beyond the roles, and gave him a sense of fulfillment that accolades and box office numbers never could. The decision to step away also reflected Tobey's enduring respect for his craft. He never stopped acting because he lost the desire. Rather, he wanted to choose roles that resonated deeply, that challenged him, and that allowed him to grow as an artist. Hollywood, however, often prioritizes profit over passion, fame over authenticity, and spectacle over substance. Tobey recognized that accepting roles purely for visibility or financial gain would compromise both his talent and his integrity. Instead, he waited, selectively engaging with projects that aligned with his values, resulting in fewer appearances, but maintaining the quality and significance of his work. Fans often speculate about whether Tobey's withdrawal represents regret or decline, but those who know him describe a man at peace with his choices. He has found a life where creativity, privacy, and personal fulfillment coexist, a balance few actors achieve. The Spider-Man films remain iconic, his early performances timeless, and his absence only adds to the mystique. Rather than fading into obscurity, Tobey Maguire's deliberate retreat is a testament to a life led with intention, demonstrating that sometimes stepping back is the most courageous act a public figure can make. By choosing privacy over perpetual visibility, Tobey has redefined what success looks like for himself. Fame and fortune are fleeting. Control, peace, and authenticity endure. Tobey's journey reminds us that the world sees only the surface, but the most meaningful stories unfold quietly, away from cameras and headlines. His decision to step away wasn't a disappearance. It was a reclamation of life, a careful crafting of a personal world where he could thrive without compromise. As the years passed, Tobey Maguire's decision to step away from Hollywood became a defining part of his legacy. While younger actors chased fame and the constant glare of cameras, Tobey quietly built a life rooted in autonomy, creativity, and personal fulfillment. The public may have interpreted his absence as a retreat, but in truth, it was a bold assertion of control. He had witnessed the pitfalls of celebrity, the loss of privacy, the relentless pressure to perform, and the expectation to conform to roles dictated by studios rather than personal choice. By leaving that behind, Tobey reclaimed his life in a way that many crave but few have the courage to pursue. His rare appearances over the past decade only added to the intrigue. When he did return to the screen, it was for roles that resonated deeply with him, projects that aligned with his values and creative vision. He was no longer beholden to the whims of Hollywood trends or the demands of mass audiences. Instead, Tobey's work became purposeful, intentional, and reflective of the experiences he had accumulated both on and off the set. Each performance, no matter how small or under the radar, carried the weight of a man who had lived fully, learned profoundly, and emerged with clarity about what truly mattered. Away from the spotlight, Tobey explored passions that brought him joy without expectation. His love for poker, philanthropy, and behind-the-scenes film production gave him avenues to challenge himself and make an impact in ways that fame alone could never offer. These pursuits allowed him to engage with the world on his own terms, balancing professional satisfaction with personal well-being. While fans longed for his return to blockbuster screens, Tobey had already found something far more valuable: the freedom to live authentically, without compromise. The story of Tobey Maguire's absence is not one of decline or defeat. It is one of intentional choice and quiet courage. In a culture obsessed with constant visibility, he made the rare decision to prioritize life over celebrity, personal growth over public validation. This path, while misunderstood by many, demonstrates a profound understanding of what it means to thrive, not just survive, in a world defined by fame and expectation. Tobey's retreat from the public eye allowed him to recalibrate, reconnect with his values, and ultimately preserve his legacy as both an actor and a human being who refuses to be consumed by the machinery of Hollywood. Today, Tobey Maguire is a reminder that stepping away can be as powerful as stepping forward. His story teaches that true fulfillment comes from balance, intentionality, and the courage to define success on one's own terms. He remains an iconic figure not only because of the roles he played, but because of the choices he made to protect his artistry, his privacy, and his peace of mind. And while audiences may no longer see him everywhere, the impact of Tobey Maguire, both on screen and in the deliberate life he has chosen off-screen, remains indelible, proving that sometimes the real story is found not in public appearances, but in the quiet decisions that shape a life fully lived.